So I'll talk a little bit about our evolution and where we're at today and some of the results that we've had. So this is kind of how we've approached SD-WAN for ourselves and some of the benefits that we've had. We're basically moved now to a CloudGenix Ion device. We initially started with virtualization. Basically, could we put everything on an x86 server, including our firewalls, including CloudGenix? Found that not to work. Interestingly enough, we ran it for a year, but from an operational perspective, we just determined we couldn't support it. So we had to move back a step and basically deploy the Ion boxes from CloudGenix in combination with Palo Alto. And then we initially started deploying Aruba networks as well. All of those systems cloud-based, so controllers in the cloud, very API first, easy to make changes on. We've had really good success with that. In our retail stores, we're deploying broadband. So broadband could be from Comcast, could be from Spectrum, could be from CenturyLink, basically whatever the location would provide us. And we're in retail stores. These retail stores, they can be out in the middle of nowhere. They could be on an Indian reservation, which has presented some challenges. And trying to get clear, good bandwidth into these locations, you would think would be an easy thing. You know, today we have Comcast or Fios at home, and we get good bandwidth. In retail locations, that's never the case. We run into lots of big challenges. In fact, one location in Milpitas, California, the best bandwidth we could get was 3 megs, believe it or not, right next to Levi's Stadium. And come to find out, after doing some digging, AT&T had lost the plans to their CO. They didn't know where all the wires went. So that was the best we could do. But we found a way around that one. But those are the types of challenges you're going to encounter. And again, that's why I recommend the Sherpa. LTE is what we use as our backup. And sometimes we use it as the primary. And there's some locations where we get some really good bandwidth on the LTE perspective. And then basically we connect into the cloud. So we've gone away from MPLS. We've gone away from requiring us to go back to the data center. It is all cloud forward, all cloud based. For our retail stores today. So what are some of the advantages? Low TCO. We've lowered our cost to operate these systems because now we don't require the CCI resource. We're using our desktop people, or not desktop, but our operations folks. We're using our junior engineers to run this, operate it, deploy it. Operational simplicity. We've simplified this configuration. It's now infrastructure as code. There isn't a lot of clicky that goes on. It's all done through Python scripts, chat ops, those types of things. We've also broke some 3-year cycles. So in the past, where we had to renegotiate that MPLS contract every 36 months, we no longer have to do that because it's all based on internet lines. And those internet lines aren't through one provider, they're through multiple providers. So that gives us leverage when we have these conversations with these vendors. Modular vendors, same thing applies here. No longer are we tied to one vendor, one ecosystem. We're now modular. So if, for instance, we're not happy with our LAN provider or a wireless provider, we swap them out after 2 to 3 years. If we're not happy with our security provider, we can do the same. That's very powerful for us. Yes.
So apparently I have all the questions here.
Yeah, no.
So I want to push into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to swap out CloudGenix, or how are you going to swap out Palo Alto? I mean, it's not.
Right.
That's that whole thing where if you want to bring in a new firewall vendor or a new SD-WAN vendor,
right,
it's going to require a little bit of work on your. I mean, you can swap out your broadband and your LTE. Really
absolutely.
But you're saying vendor agnostic.
Uh-huh.
I don't really.
Yeah. So let me. Which one do I want to pick here? Which vendor do I want to offend more? I'm going to go security this time. Sorry, J-Web. Sorry. So for instance, if I wanted to swap out my Palo Alto firewalls in a retail store, I could leverage CloudGenix to do that through their Cloud Blades product. And I could bring in, for instance, Zscaler, or I think Cisco's got something similar right now, and easily do that. So basically it's pulling out the physical gear, lighting up the Cloud Blades, and moving to Zscaler. And doing that. That's an easy way for me to swap it out. I could conversely get rid of my physical firewalls and go to Prisma as an option as well. Swapping out the CloudGenix is probably a little bit harder, but it can be done because basically what we're leveraging is internet. We're not tying back to our data center. We're not tying back to our MPLS networks. It's just a matter of swapping out boxes and homing that back. So it is very possible.
But if you're not purely cloud, I'm assuming that those retail spaces have to come back via SD-WAN to the
Certainly.
primary site for something.
Yep.
So if you pull out a CloudGenix at one site and put in Bigly for something,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily going to play with the CloudGenix. So now you have to build some sort of VPN tunnel.
No, I mean, I'd build my VPN tunnel back to my data center and then
Yeah.
then shoehorn some routing tricks in there. It can be done. Or we get to the point where we have agnostic site-to-site VPNs. So use IPsec VPNs to make it happen. It's much more possible than it was, say, in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons why we went this route. And then the other piece, obviously, cloud ready. So we now have the ability to basically determine is it the network team or is it the cloud application, and because it's software and we're getting telemetry off the controllers these days. So it's really important. All right. So here's some of the results, and I'm pretty happy about these. So innovation, this is something that's not talked about. So if you remember back in the beginning of the presentation, I talked about getting a new router and not really getting a lot of innovation out of that. With SD-WAN, we're getting innovation. Just about every 3 months, there's some new feature, some new functionality that comes to us, and it is a very useful technology. And Aaron was in the office the other day and showed me a few new things that are coming out that are really interesting. Cloud Blades is another example of that. With your physical routers of the past, you would never get an opportunity to deploy something like that in a short amount of time. So the innovation that we're seeing because we're working in software is significant. The other piece is, again, cloud ready, yeah. Install and recovery. Because we've employed automation, because this is API based, because we have controllers, the time to restore a system is rapid. Basically, all you have to do is lay down the device, put the device in, it grabs a DHCP address, contacts the controller, your configuration is back. Juxtapose that with the old days where you had a CLI, you had Cisco show up. Sorry, I mentioned a vendor there. You had a resource show up, man in a van. It took him maybe an hour or two, and it involved a WebEx to restore a system. That's no longer the case with what we have today. The installation's also much faster. So in the past, it took us about 120 hours to deploy a retail store. We're now down from touching the equipment down to less than 5 hours. In some cases, we can do it in about 60 minutes in optimal periods. So huge improvement. And that includes not only the CloudGenix piece, but the Aruba networks. And also recently, we got the firewalls down super fast too, due to one of our scripting gurus. So we're seeing huge differences in the amount of time it takes to deploy a store, and that puts our engineers basically adding value to the business as opposed to configuring gear. Return on investment. We saw a return on investment in about 8 months, and that was significant, and they weren't small numbers. It was almost close to $1 million a year in revenues that we were able, or expenses, that OpEx, that we were able to return to the business. So the business is much happier. They got more bandwidth. They got a very agile network, one that helped them deploy a retail application across North America in a very rapid fashion, and a savings as well. So it was a win across the board. So last slide. This is kind of one I wanted to show you. We started our journey on redefining or recreating retail stores for Columbia Sportswear about 18 months ago. And that started with a decision to move to Microsoft Dynamics and go to a cloud model completely. During that process, interestingly enough, and probably one of the more, it happens, is the infrastructure team was left out of the process. So we came in late, and the company came in and said, hey, we're going to deploy this application starting in April. And we're like, that's great. It's October. How are we going to do this when we haven't even been part of the planning? So we rapidly gathered a team of core of 3 folks, stuck them in a room. They teamed up with some people from our retail team, and they started doing sprints to basically design out and then work out all the automation pieces, and went through 6 sprints, got ready to deploy it, did a lot of POCs, and then finally we started deploying in the spring. Major deployments, almost 10 to 15 a night. Walked that through until just about September. And then on September, we finished 141 locations in North America and did not have to use our contingency at all. We hit our dates. And a lot of that was due to pre-planning. It was done to POCs. It was done to automation. It was done to the team and how they came together, team dynamics. It was also done, we found a good Sherpa, so that helped us out a lot as well throughout the journey. But all the things that, you saw us learn there, we use that in that process. And we're able to succeed in hitting our mark and not having to go into that contingency. And if you think about, $500 million of business riding on this, and what time is it right now? It's almost November. Our peak season is going to hit real soon. And we were able to hit that on time and not have to extend into peak season. Pretty amazing journey. And a lot of that was due to the work that we did up front and, moving to software-defined networking. So, cool. And I'll leave you with 2 quotes. Sorry, they're not climbing quotes. They're Warren Miller quotes. But I think they're very apropos to the journey I've been on for the past few years. So, thank you for your time.